Good? Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, excellent, thank you. I told my wife this morning, I can't wait to go there. I love coming here so much. I really do. And some of you I see outside, and I ran into Nancy, and Nancy told Nancy what was going on. And they told me they'd contact David, and I said, you know, I got this trip accomplished, and it would be fun. So, for those of you that I've not met before, my name is Steve McGuire. I teach at the University of Iowa. Actually, director of the School of Art and Art History. Like a number of you, I've been there for a number of years. I have been a faculty member since 1988. It seems just incredible that I would be, you know, when I was there and I was younger, I just didn't know what it would be like to, I just couldn't even imagine what it would be like to be almost 65. And I know that's young, and to be at the university. And then, I told my wife the other day, I said, I really like what I'm doing. I can't imagine retiring for at least another 10 years, because I really, really do like what I do. In my capacity at the university, I do, a few things. I teach university students in art and engineering how to build bicycles, and that, is almost like the dream job by itself. But over the past several years now, I've really enjoyed being director of the school. My job is to help people accomplish their work, be it a graduate student, an undergraduate student, or a faculty member. And I really, I didn't know what that was like, but this is work that I really, really enjoy. It doesn't mean that it's not challenging in terms of, you can imagine when, some of you know what it's like to be a faculty member and what it's like to work with faculty. So I took a trip to Iceland. And this is a trip that I took this summer, and like a lot of things that happen in life, the trip you planned was not the trip that you took. And along the way you learn things that you didn't anticipate you would need to learn, and you're all the better for having done it. Previous to this past summer, I had taken 3 other trips to Iceland in the early 2000s with the goal of completing a project that I did complete, Icelandic saga bicycle. So I actually traveled around the entire country, and I interviewed people on their farms, those farms that were associated with a different piece of Icelandic saga. And when it was pretty incredible. You go into a house, and you could see paintings over 300 years of that farm. So in Iowa, we've got century farms. In Iceland, they actually have millennial farms. So farms that have been there over 1,000 years. And University of Iowa actually has a fairly substantial connection to the University of Iceland. In fact, I remember going to a parish home on the south coast of Iceland back in the day, and knocked on the door, introduced myself, and she said, University of Iowa. I went to nursing school there. And, so that was kind of fun. So I build bicycles for places that I take trips, and that bicycle is built for the specific purpose of accomplishing that trip. And so the bicycle I have with me this evening is the bicycle that I built for the trip to Iceland. And so I've been calling projects Design, Build, Ride, and this one is the Iceland Rift. Now, the thing about Iceland is you can't imagine you could pack that much geological beauty in that small of a place. relatively speaking, it's small. Square miles, it's almost the same as Kentucky in terms of square miles. But in those square miles, you have geological activity going every second. So I'm going to go through some of this. And please raise your hand at any point and ask me questions. And Martha, I haven't seen you forever. Good to see you. Okay, so I'm actually going to begin with a little bit of an anecdote. The anecdote about, I started something automatic here, I think. Go back. Okay, all right. So, in Iceland, we went through the interior, and on this particular day, we were now crossing over to a hut. This year, the roads in the interior opened the latest on record ever because they had such a harsh winter and everything had stayed frozen. And so we were traveling on roads that had yet opened. And to begin with, it's always sparsely populated. We saw 0 vehicles from north to south. We saw 2 people. But on this day, the first river crossing, and these are glacial streams, I got my bicycle across. I went back to get somebody else's bicycle, and I took the plunge that I did not want to take. And it was 36 degrees, and it was raining, and I had observed over the past 3 days that the days could be challenging in terms of accomplishing miles. Some of you know I was on the Iditarod Trail. My pace on the Iditarod Trail at 5.4 miles an hour was faster than my pace in 2 lava fields. That's how challenging it was. It took one day 12 and a half hours to go 30 kilometers. That was a challenge. So on this day, laying in the water, being 64 years old, I knew that my mind was not going to be kind to me for the rest of the day. And I knew that I had 2 changes of clothes that would keep me dry. I thought the prudent thing would be to change into those dry clothes. It was raining. I worried that I would eventually get all my dry clothes wet. And so I decided that I was at least going to attempt to prove the qualities of wool. And I took off my long pants that had been more of a windbreak, and my bike shorts over that, and then I had a wool top. I was wet from about right here all the way down, and I decided that every time during the day, if it felt unpleasant, I would just let it go and just do it over and over and over again. Now, with me were 5 friends, and I have to say, this is the best group of people in terms of working together that I could have ever been with, and it was terrific. And I know that, from experience, one of the most important things is to have the disposition that your day is always going to be better if you make sure that everybody else's day is good. And we had that kind of team, and that was excellent. So I knew that I was going to be wet, I was going to be uncomfortable. It was just the way it was going to be. And then late in the day, being, there's almost 24 hours of daylight, right, at this time of year. This is, on this day, it was July 8th. And the wind began to pick up. It was about 10 p.m. We still had about another 6 miles to go, I anticipated. And a friend's chain broke. The spare chain links that he had were not the right size. I dug through a bag. I found some that did work. The wind, I would learn later, had already gone over 60 miles an hour. So I'll explain how the weather works in terms of Iceland with some images that are forward. But the wind just gradually picked up. And this is just after midnight. And we're crossing the last bit of water before we make it to a hut. And we didn't know if this hut would be, we'd be able to access inside. We learned that they leave all huts unlocked just for these kinds of situations for people. And we got in. But as my friend James said, 3 of the days were not live to ride, they were ride to live. Because there was no shelter. And it was incredibly cold when you're wet all day. Okay, location. I'm going to go back. I know I must hold that too hard when I do it. Building a bicycle for a purpose of discovery and adventure. You can do no better than Iceland and the Central Highlands Design, Build, Ride, Iceland Ridge. 3 previous long trips, as I mentioned, happened there. So this is Iceland. I'm learning how to do this quick right thing. This is, of course, Iceland. And this glacier that I'm going to try to use the pointer. Oh yeah, maybe. I'm just playing. This glacier right here is the biggest glacier of Europe. Yeah, you know. And did you go there? No. So that glacier is huge. And my goal, in trying to figure out where to ride was putting together a route that would be just, I would actually see what Iceland is about. And there's a mid-Atlantic ridge in Iceland that crosses Iceland. Here's the country. Go back. Here's the island. What appear like, so these are actually glacial streams that make their way from the glaciers that you see down to the ocean, where Iceland sits about 30 miles south of the Arctic Circle. And that question, anybody? Yes. Nope. You just get wet. Yeah. I get dirty. Yeah. But I do have a kind of fender that I use. On here, you're going to see in an image, I have a bag that goes over the back, and it kept me from getting too much. Location, situated on the north, I'll just describe it. Keep doing this. Hopefully it'll stay. Okay, on the left side, the North American tectonic plate. On the right side, the Eurasian tectonic plate. That's literally 2 tectonic plates. They're pulling apart, and as they pull apart, they release all kinds of geologic activity, specifically volcanoes. And so the country is one big hot spot. When you go in to take a shower, you turn your water to a specific temperature, and that water is all geothermically heated. It's fairly incredible, but North American Eurasian tectonic plate. And I'm going to try this. Okay, so I had to figure out a route, and I really wanted to explore the area where there was a lot of geological activity. The stars that you see are significant volcanoes. There are more, but those are the significant ones. The line that you see that's the biggest that goes down is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge as it goes across Iceland and the ice and makes its way from north to south. And then a second piece of that making its way down to the Reykjanes Peninsula near Reykjavik. And good. I just keep doing this. There. Okay, so, go back again. It's too little, I'm too bright there. So the route actually took me about 100 hours to complete. And I did it by going to topographic maps, topo maps, going to Google Earth, using a piece of software that's called Ride with GPS to make the route. And then eventually, literally calling people on farms and asking them about specific features and what was possible. Okay, this is just a kind of image that I put together for the purpose of, a kind of poster that I begin to make. And Iceland, again, the North Volcanic Zone, the East Volcanic Zone, the West Volcanic Zone. I wanted the route that we took to navigate this entire area. And so, those red dots that you see was the route that we took. Let me try. Okay, so it's okay. You get an advanced image. So a lot of people know, of course, that Iceland is curious in that it's really far north, but it's relatively warm. So our average December temperature is colder than Reykjavik's, even though Iceland is so far north, and that really has to do with the North Atlantic current that makes its way up and around the top of Iceland. What's happening right now, though, is Iceland is experiencing climate change by getting a little bit colder in the north, and that's because the thermal line that moves that North Atlantic current over the top is being diluted in terms of the amount of salt in the water because of the glacial melt from Greenland. And that is slowing down the movement of the water, and that, of course, will affect the weather as well. Over the top, you can see the effect of Greenland in those lighter blue lines. Average temperature in a day doesn't vary very much. It goes from usually about 46 to about 56 during the day. And at night when we're in the interior, we're actually up around 3,000 feet. It's colder. We saw temperatures, like I said, 36 degrees. That was normal. Okay, wind speed. Wind speed in Iceland is given out in terms of meters per second, and I became fairly adept at making the conversion from miles per hour to meters per second. But on that evening that we reached that hut, the wind continued to increase until it went not only right there, it went all the way down. So for 18 hours, the wind was over 41 meters a second, over 89 miles an hour. Just incredible. And in the morning, when we got up, wasn't heated inside. I and a friend went to get water down in the river, and we had to crawl to go get it because the winds were so strong. And we got it back up there. We spent the day, we didn't go anywhere. The wind was so strong that it was blowing rain through the walls of the building. It's just incredible. This is a listing for, this is a listing for the mountain roads and the opening date earliest, the median, the opening date latest. And this year broke just about every record. So it really didn't open up until much later. And in a way, there was a bit of a blessing, and that meant that the glacial streams were lower, if that makes sense, because there was less melting going on. The route that I took, and you see topographic or elevation profile, and you go from coast to coast, and in the interior, you go up sharply, and you're on a high plateau in a volcanic desert, essentially, black sand. And questions, anybody? Okay. I made maps. I like to make maps. I put together a chart, or not chart, I guess, a set of cue sheets. So this has all the directions. I gave it out to each person. This is the route that we took. So we flew into Reykjavik, essentially, or Keflavik is where all planes land. Went to Reykjavik, spent the night, and then flew from Reykjavik up to Akureyri in the north. And strategy, I took 2 bicycle boxes. Each person had 2, so a box inside of a box. We packed our bike in a box, then we put that box in another box. We left 1 box at the hotel in Reykjavik, then we flew to Akureyri, and then we put our bikes together in Akureyri, and we began to head south. And on that first day, we got a real feel for what the weather is going to be like. So we got to Akureyri just after noon. We had everything packed. We'd gone to the grocery store. We headed up north along the coast. The wind began to increase. We took a right, and the wind increased to 70 miles an hour. And it rained, and it rained, uncharacteristically heavy. They announced a yellow alert, and I didn't know what that was until that day, and from then on I did know. That day that we had those heavy winds in the interior, the winds were everywhere. Some were not as strong, but they closed the ring road in the south because cars were being blown off. It was that strong. So through the interior, between the glaciers, and then down to the south is what we meant. So at the bottom here is actually the north, and then Vik at the very top is the south. Similar area, but a little bit closer. The glaciers. So we went. Going back. We went right through there in terms of path. Again, one of the maps that I made. The length, we were there for 2 weeks, and we rode 11 of those days, and the others were spent, yeah. Oh, try. Okay. So we were there for 14 days. 11 of those were riding days. And as I mentioned, we could struggle and sometimes just to go 50 kilometers. And 5 days were extremely difficult. I began to realize that it took us to go about 200 miles through the highlands. What it would take, it would have been quicker to go around the entire country on the ring road by bicycle. The training was that involved. Anybody? Okay. The kit. So I packed light. I had about, well, there it is. This is all the gear that I took on my bicycle. Those are my water shoes to cross with, my passport, my billfold, spot tracker, so Lori, my wife, knows that everything is okay, and fuel for my stove, and then 18 pounds of food, dry food, which I will never eat again, dehydrated food, and all my clothes, and everything packed up and ready to go. I can't tell you, on the one hand, it's really fun to plan and prepare. On the other hand, it's just really exhausting, and at some point you just don't want to do it. You just want to get going. Does that mean? Yeah. I am trying to figure out just the precise way to touch this.
How many of you were there?
There were 6 of us all together. So the bike, titanium bicycle that I made for this. I ride a single speed. It was really good there. Single speed, you're always in the right gear because you don't have any choices, so you don't have to think about it. James and Taryn, my two friends, father and son, who are Black Sheep Bikes. They come to the University of Iowa. They're actually going to be here in 3 weeks. It was really interesting the first day. So one thing you all know that nobody knows when they're younger, but you know that they don't know, is that everything is temporary. It's not going to last forever. And on the first day, Taryn, who's 24, was just all about this great adventure, the riding, no problem, everything's great. After 16 hours and not going very far, he was more like, oh my God, I feel horrible. I don't know how I'm going to do this. What if I can't do it? What if I'm the person that holds everybody back? And then he just really began to get stuck in his head. And so I waited up for Taryn and his dad and talked to James, his dad, on the left. Just, he said, Taryn's really feeling it. It's pretty difficult. He didn't know it would be this tough. And I said, well, we're going to change this. We're always going to stop at 8 p.m. if we can. And it's a really tough day. At 3 p.m. we'd gone 30 miles, felt so good, no problem. It took us until after midnight to get the next few miles. It was just that difficult. I stayed back and I talked with Taryn and I said, so how you doing? I'm okay. He said, how's this going to be? And I said, Taryn, unfortunately, you're 24. You do not have the luxury of knowing that it all goes away. It's going to be okay. You're going to feel horrible, and then you're going to feel fine. And you're going to feel horrible, and then you're going to feel fine. And he said, so that's what my dad knows. I said, exactly. So he was good for the rest of the time. Getting to the airport, Carol, John, and Scott. And we flew out of Minneapolis. The direct flight is really good. It means that we don't have any issues of losing luggage or a bicycle midway. I can't say enough about Iceland Air. Just exceptionally good all the way around. They have been when we've worked with them. Taryn. Okay, so he's holding us up. I discovered this miracle drug in Iceland that I did not know about. It's called coffee. I've never drank coffee. I remember the one time I tried to drink it was in 1981 when I came to Iowa City to find an apartment in the summer, and I had to be back to work the next morning. And I was driving all night, and I thought, everybody says they drink coffee to keep them awake. I'll get some coffee. It made me sick to my stomach. It kept me awake. And I just never drink coffee. I had very little sleep. The conditions were really rough the first few days, and I was genuinely worried about everybody's safety and comfort and trying to figure that out. And I decided, okay, I'm going to drink some coffee. I took a drink of coffee. My life changed, just like that. And I drink coffee every morning until I got back. This is all of us outside of a gas station just before we left. And Taryn, myself, Scott, John, Carol, and James. And it's probably about 42 degrees outside right now, light rain. We're in Aquarary. The good thing about gas stations in Iceland is they have everything. So anything that you need is there. You need fuel for your stove, it's there. If you need hot dogs are there. So Iceland has these famous hot dogs. They're really, really bad for you. They're only a little bit above the roller dogs that you see at truck stops. But when you're hungry, these are just the best things in the world. So I ate plenty of these when I had the opportunity. This is, we're just getting ready to depart Aquarary. James and Taryn, myself. Later on, I learned that the storm that we had that first day was incredibly strong, and you can see it just make its way up over the country. I'm going to try something here. Good. All right, the first really cool place, Waterfalls. Did anybody go? It's just my. Okay. Waterfalls. So, Iceland has incredible waterfalls. You know, it just keeps moving. Yeah. See, Lindsay's really, she was hired because she's really good at this, right? Yeah, it looks like that's the case. Really, she's got this. So, waterfalls are everywhere in Iceland. It's almost like you can turn just to the side and there's going to be a waterfall. It's just some pretty incredible. Again, most of it is glacial in terms of the water. Our bicycles all lined up. I like this picture a lot.
Might have to do it just this way, right?
Is this okay in terms of viewing?
Everyone see it fine? If it's not big.
Okay, all right. So, is this okay? Okay. So our bicycles all lined up, getting ready to head into the interior. It was pretty interesting. So one of our groups said, we were riding the first day and said, Steve, I don't know how to tell you this, but I am terrified of water. And I'm really worried about having to cross all these rivers. And I thought to myself, now you tell me? We made it, but it's just one of the things that you navigate. Oh, great smiling faces as we start out. This is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're actually in a lava field, but it's grown over. And we didn't know that it was going to take many more hours just to go a few more miles. Oh, was that me? Oh, I thought it might have been me. I was okay. So image of John and Scott, and then Taryn and his dad camping outside the Dinglefell hut in the first night. John in the morning. Let's see, I'll do this. See if I can. Okay, now I'm trying to make. It's actually a video, so I'm gonna see if I can. Here we go. I got it. Good to go. So I just shot some video of getting on my bike, riding through, but in terms of change, hold my phone with one hand, ride my bike. So this is G2 track. There are places where you can't even tell there's a actual place to ride. See, with nobody.
Sharp rocks versus your tires.
I was really worried about it. So when we did have that, we all got off and we walked because that was not what we wanted. Some of the lava was really difficult for that reason. So this is outside the hut the first night, Dinglefell. or it's in the morning, but the night, the hut that we stayed in the first day. I like this little video of this is what the interior is like. It's just so barren.
Go. Go for it.
Whee! It was good.
Did the rest of the folks have bikes like yours?
Yes, yeah, they did. And, you know, I actually made 2 of them, and that was kind of fun. So it's really interesting. You would think that this is a virtue, but it's actually just out of necessity. I can't have more than 2 bicycles because if I do, I drive myself crazy. I just don't like to have that many things. And so I make a bicycle, I ride it for a year or 2, and then I give it away. And so all my friends have bicycles. And I really, with a solid attempt, in the last 3 years have given away 9 bicycles. I just don't need them. Because it's just too much thinking. And they're not doing a whole lot. You would think that, oh, that's so cool, he gives everything away. Really, I just don't want to think about it. Another video, but I'm going to move this one on. So this is Taryn riding in Lava Field.
How steep were the inclines?
So there was one that was 28%, but in others, really no more than 12. And you know, I'm going to actually, just because, let's see, I'm gonna, so, Lindsay, can I? Let's see. I am going to go ahead and increase the images because I think it'll help seeing some of these others. And, thank you. Oh, gotcha. Is that big? Yep. Okay. All right. I think you'll be able to see these a little bit better. So my bicycle with all the gear, and you know who else was here many years ago? Neil Armstrong. So this is actually where they trained for the landing on the moon. And so I called where I slept that night the Sea of Tranquility. So this is the Sea of Tranquility. But you can see the black sand down below because you can see my footprints. And then you see all this lava that has solidified. And the interior is really like that. It's not everywhere. Leaving Dinglefell Hut in the morning, just, you know, black sand desert everywhere. You know, it looks barren, but it's just really, it's like you're on I was going to say another planet, but really another world. Again, where we camped one night, I called it Sea of Tranquility. Really strong winds, by the way, and it took all of us working together, actually 4 of us, each time to set up one tent because the wind was so strong. And then the wind would die down later. Normally that path would be clear this time of year, or the time of year that we were there, but again, it was very late, and so the road still had snow. And we had a number of sections that were long that we just needed to trek across. Taryn in the water, really cold water. Taryn, I can't believe he just walked out to the middle and stood there. Filled up his bladder that also is a filter. Now, the reality is you can drink water everywhere in the interior just by dipping in. The glacial streams, though, are high in minerals, and those minerals can upset your stomach, and so we filtered the water. There are places just like this where you're trying to figure out where to ride your bike. And the sharp rocks, these are sharp rocks. Yeah. John coming up from one of the rivers that we crossed. We had 5 big ones in one day. And there were smaller ones. There were days where we crossed over 20 just to get through the day. Again, that third night hut, Nilamar. I sent this as a text to my friends. I'll say this, Iceland can kill you. I now see why it's rated 9 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. It's potentially every bit as dangerous as Alaska in the winter. Cold rain, hurricane winds, sections that are difficult to ride. If something happens to you in the Central Highlands, it could be days before someone can come and get you. Our consensus, best done on fat bike. Carol's 3.0 tires had trouble in some spots. 3 of the days were ride to live. Literally, we recognized we could be in very serious trouble without finding shelter. This is outside that hut that we made it to. When the winds were so strong, everybody's smiling, headed out. Really quite good. My bicycle, that's an intersection. That's what an intersection in the interior looks like. And that's about as good as the road gets. Somebody graded it at some point. At least moved the gravel.
So would cars drive on that?
They do, yeah. So they have just huge monster trucks that you can adjust the air pressure in each tire from the cab of the vehicle. And yeah, I'm going to show you an image of the search and rescue vehicles. Okay, I'm on back. I didn't know. Okay, so, but yeah, this is the road. You can actually see tire tracks that are there. This is what my bike looked like packed up. I had my tent in the back right here, my shoes hanging off, clothes and food in the other bags, my GPS unit, batteries, some more food, and in my bottles, water and sometimes food. So I would take a dehydrated food and put it in the bottle, fill the bottle up with water, just let it sit over a few hours, and eat cold lemonade or cold oatmeal. And it got old really quick. Again through the interior. And just really beautiful. Okay. Can you see? I see that's all. Let me go back. Go on. I'll do it. I'll show you. Okay. Gotta kind of see what's going on here. Well, see all those flies? Oh well, it happens. So when you stop, you get a lot of flies. Eventually we made it to the south of the island, and so this is on the coast. I'm not a beer drinker or a drinker. Not a coffee drinker, not a drinker. I'm a water drinker, for sure. But they had Viking beer and they loved it. And so that's what they've got. And boy, it felt good getting to a place where we could just sleep in bed. Beautiful cathedral in downtown Reykjavik. Eric the Red, or actually Leif Erikson statue. I'm gonna move. So, let's see if this moves on me. Okay, so I'm going back next summer, and I really kind of just needed to scout and see what was going on, and I'm pretty fortunate in the enthusiasm that people have for the trip. My brother-in-law is one of the best drone videographers in the world. Many movies, he's done footage, a lot of commercials. He's really excited. He's going back to Iceland with his drones, and we're going to shoot a movie. And this is one route. Another route is actually from the furthest tip in the west to the furthest tip in the east, and going from about right there, over that glacier, and then up to the west fjords. But my brother's going to go, and then James and Taryn and John are going to return. And hopefully it's going to be really good now, especially that we know what the interior is like. And are there questions? Yes.
Go back and show the truck.
Do what?
Go back and show the big truck.
Oh, did they pop up and I just missed them?
Popped up and-
Okay, I'm glad you said that. While I was talking, let's go back. Actually, let me go back and see if I listed this. We camped, good enough. This is the extent of trees. Okay, I'm going back. Okay, so Iceland Search and Rescue is all volunteer, but they go through 2 years of training. It's paid for the most part, by donations. And the challenge is it's a country of 375,000 people, and they have over 1 million guests in the summer. So there's just too many people to keep track of. And their disposition is, if you're dumb enough to get yourself into trouble, it's on you. And this summer when the volcano erupted, which by the way, we were only 2.5 miles away, but it hadn't erupted yet. People just go right up. It's just what they did. They didn't try to hold people back. It's just impossible. But these are the vehicles that they use to get through the interior. Questions? More questions? Yes.
Those huts, what are those, is that what they're for, travelers like you and?
Mm-hmm. So there's a big trekking, hiking enthusiasm through Europe and through Iceland. And the trekkers will come to Iceland to hike. And the huts themselves are spread out about every 35 to 50 miles. You can find, otherwise you're camping out, but they're spread out through the interior. Now, you're supposed to reserve them, and I can imagine when there are a lot of people, they're hard to get into. But when we were there, we only saw 2 people. They were both trekkers, and one in each of the huts. And so when I go back this next time, I am going to reserve all the huts that I think, according to the itinerary that I'm imagining, and proceed accordingly. Because you know, it's fine to camp out, but the conditions can really be difficult, and it's not bad to have a roof over your head. And, other questions? Yes?
What was the biggest surprise?
The biggest surprise? You know, I guess it wasn't a surprise as much as it was actually experiencing it. And that thing is just how vulnerable you are in the highlands, because there is no shelter, and the wind is strong, and there's rain. And when a couple of times when we were really, really wet, really, really cold, you could feel your vulnerability in a way that I didn't even feel in Alaska sometimes, because there was no place for shelter. Now, we could set up a tent, and we thought that, you know, if we needed to, we'd set up one of the two-man tents, and we would all get in. But it was impressed upon me just how overwhelming the actual environment could be. Yeah.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah.
Then what are you going to be changing next time? I mean, you've already talked about reserving the huts. Is there something else that you will be doing to try and mitigate that sense of vulnerability?
I'm going to take more changes of dry clothes. I'm going to take real food, and I'm going to take a double tent instead of a single tent. I'll be mentally prepared to spend more than a day in that tent if I need to. I'll take stakes that will actually be able to better anchor it down in a high wind. I will, I'll keep the same single speed gearing that I had. The rain gear that I take, I'm going to take two different kinds of rain gear, one for real heavy, one for just a little bit lighter. I'm going to take I'm going to take exclusively wool gloves. I had a couple of different things. I definitely will have a mosquito net over my head. Trying to think of other things. You know, I had a camp pillow, but I think I'm going to take two camp pillows. Just so you see. I'm not going to eat dehydrated food. It was just horrible after a few days. Just horrible. And everybody, now one thing that did save me, I had these bars that were just about this big, and they each had 1,000 calories. They tasted horrible, but I was guaranteed that I would have really consistent good nutrition, or at least I would have what I needed. And so as much as I hated them, I would take them, because when it was raining, there was no time to really stop and set stuff up. You just want to keep on moving. And so I would do that. The biggest thing that's going to change, my brother and my brother-in-law are going to have a vehicle that if there's an emergency, I'd be able to call. But I want to do this video, and really the only way to do that is to have something that can transport those drones. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Are you taking the same bike?
Nope. Building a new bike.
Why is that?
A couple of reasons. One is, three reasons. One, I could do it. The other is, it would be, I think one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the seat tube angle just a little bit. I'm going to change the wheelbase to make it even shorter. And This bike will actually take 5-inch tires, and I use it in the winter for that. I'm going to make it just a little bit narrower so that doesn't take tires quite that big. And then I'm going to open up the main frame area so that I can put a large bag. And I'm going to, this is back to the question, I'm going to drop some of those panniers that I had, and I'm going to concentrate my weight in the middle. Now, when I cross before my thinking was, I'll use the panniers and I'll let the water go through here. And then I also thought, if it's really bad, I'll take off the panniers, I'll carry those separate from the bike, and then carry the bike across. My experience was I'll probably be okay, and if not, I'll just take off the frame bag that has everything in it. When you're crossing the river with the bike, you have to angle your way so that the river, which is pushing the bike and you, but especially the bike, drifts in a kind of line so that you're okay. You're not going to be able to fight the current. You kind of have to go a little bit with it. It's like a compromise. You're not going to go all the way down the river, but you're also not going to go straight across. And that's reality. I'll probably, what else might I do? One thing I'm going to do next time that I didn't do is, I don't know if you know this term, I just learned it. It's OG, original gangster. So what that really means is this thing was done years ago and you're doing it, or you were the first to do it. Back in the day, you remember these times, there was no cell phone, there were no ATMs. When I traveled before, in the early 80s especially, I took these crazy things called traveler's checks, and I carried cash, and I used a payphone, and I didn't have an odometer, and I had a AAA map, and that's how I did it. I can remember the first time I was on the Iditarod Trail, 1995. There's no GPS. I literally had a topo map. And I look back and I think, oh my God, how did you do that? That is so scary. Why did you didn't even think about it. So this time, I'm not gonna take a GPS or any of that. I'm just gonna take a map with me, and I'm gonna ride my bike, and that'll be okay. And I think that it'll be enjoyable that way. Yes?
Were all the rivers walkable? They're just glacial now, so you walk across?
Yeah, I anticipate this next time they could be up to here in some spots, but not much more than that. And the current can be really, really swift. And it can vary kind of dramatically through the day depending on the amount of sunshine and heat because of the melt. But for the most part, they're all navigable. There are no bridges in the interior, and so you are crossing them. Yeah. Other questions? Yes?
Were there settlements along the way?
Settlements. So through the interior, there are zero. Outside on the ring road or just off the ring road in some kilometers, there are a lot of farmsteads. And many of those allow you to stay. They're called also guest house, and you can stay at those. And we'll actually utilize, I think, a couple of guest house as we're in the north to begin and in the south as we get there. Yeah. Does that? Yeah.
I was just wondering, all this with the real food and all that, is it going to be heavier to
Yeah.
carry?
Mm-hmm.
But you'll think it's still okay.
Yeah, I think that I would be really good if I had cheese and crackers and sausage for 3 meals. And that would be really, really good. That's what tasted good every day. And it was just not, I mean, I had one morning, I was really tired, 3 hours of sleep. I needed this new drug called coffee. I had leftover hard, dehydrated spaghetti that I had made into a meal in my cup, and so I had spaghetti coffee, and it tasted just fine, but my preference is cheese and crackers, over and over, right? But we got to this Highland hotel after we got out of the Highlands. Unbelievable food, just so much, and I was starving. I ate 2 hamburgers, and I took a third one to bed with me. I ate a piece of it, and I stuck it underneath the bed, and the woman who was working at the receptionist desk, I said, so when's breakfast? And she said, it's between 7 and 10. I thought, I'm a person that wakes up at 4:30. I no problem. I'm not sleeping a whole lot. I wake up, we gotta go, it's 9:30. We were just so wiped out. And we quickly made breakfast, and then I'm with my friends, and everybody has a different disposition towards buffets. And mine is that you paid for it, you can eat it. And so Scott's disposition was you eat what's on your plate and you don't take anything with you. And so Scott looked at me like, what are you doing? I made all these ham and cheese sandwiches from the breakfast buffet, and I loaded them up, and he was giving me a hard time until lunch. Do you have some of those ham and cheese sandwiches that you made? And so we did that, but yeah, cheese and crackers, that's what we have. Yes?
Do you see any wildlife or insects or anything at all?
This is really interesting. So the interior is almost devoid of life. There are the silence that's there when the wind isn't there is really loud. The bugs were the ones that were flying around. In the interior, no birds. But you get to the coast and there are a lot of birds. There are Arctic foxes that are out. But there's a section that we went through that the hardest part, actually that part where we had the wind, there's a square area that historically is kind of like the Icelandic Bermuda Triangle, where everything happens. And back in the original settlement days, when people would come across the island to go to the Althing, the first parliament in the world, they would have to navigate. But one thing that they always did was avoid that square in the middle of the island in the Highlands. They would go all the way around the coast, even though it took much longer, because it was so barren and potentially, life-threatening because of the stuff that could happen. You're really high. You're on a small island. The ocean currents are affecting the wind that's around, and the closer you get to the Arctic, the more you rely on the stability of the climate. But ironically, if it gets thrown off, it can be really significantly different. So, I try to describe to people right now, something cool is happening in the North Pole we don't know. The Polar Vortex is being created. It happens every year. And it remains really, really stable. And for Iceland, that Polar Vortex in the winter is a big deal. It keeps the country or the island what it is. And then what happens is, with global warming, there are anomalies. And it allows that Polar Vortex to break up and shift and come south, so that when I'm in northern Minnesota in January, it can be horribly cold, minus 40 degrees. Iceland really depends on a level of stability that is not what it used to be. And so there can be really extreme conditions in the interior. And in the north in the summer, it's actually getting colder than winter. Yeah. Other questions? Yes?
Well, you only get a single speed, what's your duration?
So for Iowa City, it's 2-to-1. And then in Iceland, I ran a 28-tooth chainring up front and 19-inch, or see, 19-tooth chainring in the back. So, you know, less than 2-to-1. And that worked okay. You know, when you're riding a single speed, you've got 2 gears, riding and walking. And so when the hill's too steep, you get off and walk. And you know, I think the older I get, the more I just appreciate having a single speed. I just don't have to think. If I go into a long event and with people that are a lot younger, on gear bikes with thinner tires, by mile 150, I'm all good because I can't go fast. I just rest, you know, when I can't go fast, and then I go fast up the hills because I have no choice but to stand up. Yeah. Other questions? Michael?
Did you find any hot springs along the way or anything like that?
Yeah. Hot springs are located everywhere, and you know, more often than not, the hot spring is in proximity to another spring that can be cool, and so you can actually find the right bathtub temperature. So you can place yourself in proximity to both of those so that you get the temperature that you like, which is kind of good. Not this time. And I also didn't see boiling mud, which is really dangerous. And but you know, you smell the sulfur everywhere in the country. You know, it's just such an interesting place. It's just so geologically rich. It's just off the charts. Yeah. Yes?
What are your plans for the film that you're shooting, or you're planning to shoot?
So it'll be about a 20-minute film. It's going to be about it's going to be about designing the bicycle. So there'll be some video, just short video bit of designing it. There'll be some video in our shop at school of building the bicycle, the titanium bike. And then the majority of it is going to be doing the ride itself. And as we, you know, make our way across. Yeah. Other questions? Okay. Thank you.